Good morning. Welcome to Gimpy's History Corner. I'm Gimpy. The name came from my two grandsons, Ellis and Archie. Here we are at the Empire State Building this past weekend. Archie's squatting. Okay, this is video number 71, and the topic is the Bush versus Gore presidential election of 2000. The Republican candidate was George W. Bush, who was the governor of Texas and the son of the previous President Bush, Herbert Walker Bush. His running mate was Dick Cheney, who had been a Secretary of Defense and the White House Chief of Staff. And the Democrat was Vice President Al Gore and a senator from Connecticut named Joe Lieberman, who was Jewish. And this is following 2 terms of office by Democrat Bill Clinton, and went through all the Monica Lewinsky scandals. But other than the scandals, he had a pretty good presidency as far as the economy went and budgets and so forth. So this was September, October, and I got a phone call from my boss, said, hey, the Gore campaign wants to come to your school and do an event. And I thought, what? My school in 1927? 3-story middle school? Yes, they want to come to your school. I said, do we really want to do this with the right-wing nature of our community? Well, they said, yes, he's the vice president. What do you do? Can't say no. So I started one of the wildest weeks of my life. I had his advanced men come to the school and Secret Service, talk to my staff, inspect the school and look for spots to do things. They were actually doing multiple schools in the area, and mine was just going to be the first. They were going to ride in on a school bus, get off, come to the way my middle school worked. The kids got off the bus and kind of lounged around the front yard for a few minutes before they entered the school. The advanced men liked that, so they wanted that to be the case. And my student council president was a girl. Went down to his hotel and met with him and rode the bus in with him. They decided to use an art class for the meeting. They wanted me to pick a certain number of parents, students, and teachers to be an audience for him to ask questions. So I chose what I thought was a good selection of parents, teachers, and students to represent our school. And it all got started. I mean, it was a ton amount of work for me and my custodial staff, and wow. But the Secret Service were very impressive. The advanced men, they were, PR men, and I don't know if they were politicians or not, but they were fairly young, and we had to say no to some things. But this was the Vice President of the United States. Doesn't happen every day. So they came, and like I said, they used the art room and put signs up on the chalkboard about their educational platform. That's Al Gore, of course, there, and Joe Lieberman. Probably may not remember him. I'm not even sure he's still alive. That's my student council president. So they came into the office and did announcements. Joe Lieberman said, "Go Panthers." I said, "We're not Panthers, we're Vikings," and he got a kick out of that. So I don't know where that came from. Of course, you all had to take the pictures. This is with me in the middle, our superintendent, Joe Lieberman, Al Gore, and my assistant principal right by the front door. So the whole event lasted probably about 2 hours, and then he was off to his other school. And the advanced men and the Secret Service both told me this will be like a tornado. You'll be in the midst of a tornado, and that's what it was. I mean, the news people that showed up, holy mackerel, from all over the world, not just America, but they were everywhere. And unfortunately, we had a kind of unusually humid day for that time of year. Usually it's cool, it's fall. But, you know, one of these weird, humid fronts came through, and poor old Al had the wrong shirt on. He had a green, you know how those politicians, handlers do. They put clothes on them they want them to wear to signify something. He had a earth green shirt on, and it showed a lot of sweat. So a lot of the pictures are him with sweaty armpits. And he came in leading in the polls, and soon after, Bush started edging ahead of him. And I always blamed our sweaty armpit day at the middle school. Okay, so how'd the election go? It was one of the closest elections in history. Of course, it all depends on the Electoral College. This is one of the first to have where the popular vote did not match the Electoral College. The key state in the end, as you may remember, was Florida. Originally, the experts said it's going to go to Gore. Then they said, no, it's going to go to Bush. Then they finally just said it's too close to call. That was back when they used punch cards, long computer cards, I guess you'd call them. And you'd go in and you'd use a little pin, and you put either Gore or Bush and push it down in and break that hole in that punch card for the person you wanted. And if you didn't push hard enough, you'd end up what they called a hanging chad, which in other words, the perforated spot there but next to the name did not go through. You didn't push hard enough. Maybe you're an old woman and you're weak and you just can't do it. So they started looking at these ballots and they couldn't tell who they voted for. So the Gore campaign was ready to concede, but then they found out about the hanging chads, and they said, wait a minute, let's double check this. So they got a court order to double check. So you had pictures of these people sitting at tables looking at hanging chads, trying to figure out who the person wanted to vote for. Okay, the election was on November 7th, and on December 12th, the U.S. Supreme Court, the Bush people took it to the U.S. Supreme Court, and they ruled in a 5-4 decision totally on party lines. You know, the Republican judges voted 5, and the Democratic judges voted 4. They ruled that all recounts had to stop, and they awarded Florida and the election to Bush. Obviously, one of the more controversial Supreme Court decisions of all time. That put the Electoral College, Bush at 271 votes, Gore 266. So 5-vote difference. And Florida had 25 electoral votes. So Florida was the key. Gore had 500,000 votes more than Bush in the popular vote, but the electoral vote by state went to Bush in a very narrow victory. Of course, this led to better voting methods. Today it's all electronic. Of course, in a close election, the loser always still says they cheated. You know, that's Trump's main thing. Oh, they cheated. I actually won. Crazy. Why didn't he go to the Supreme Court? You had a stacked Supreme Court. Why didn't you do that? Okay, Gore distanced himself in the campaign from Clinton because of the Lewinsky scandal. That was a major decision for him. He was the vice president. You know, did they have Clinton campaign for him or not? But he chose not. He asked Bill not to campaign for him. He wanted to win it on his own, and he didn't want to be associated with the Lewinsky scandal. Whether that was the right decision or not, I don't know. But Gore was considered stiff and unrelatable. I met him that day. He was in my office. Joe Lieberman had more of a sense of humor. But, you know, he was just a guy to me. I didn't notice any stiffness or anything. Bush was considered more relatable. He was from Texas, had that Texas twang. There were internal divisions in the Democratic Party. Bill Bradley, who was more of a liberal Democrat, ran against Gore in the primaries. So the Democratic Party kind of split from its liberal and centrist factions. And then the other factor was Ralph Nader. These third-party candidates, just like Ross Perot, made it so the first Bush would lose to Bill Clinton. Ralph Nader got 100,000 votes, and I'm sure he took them away from Gore. So I don't know, these third-party candidates, I don't know. I know they believe in what they're saying, but what you end up with is the farthest away from them ends up winning. So Gore was closer to Nader than Bush was, but Bush won because of Nader. Crazy. Same thing with Ross Perot with Bush's dad. Perot and Bush's dad were closer than Perot and Clinton, but because of Perot, Clinton won. Third-party candidate, just like way back to Teddy Roosevelt. Crazy. I don't know what they're thinking. Okay, that's my Al Gore story of my school in the year 2000, way back when I was skinny, no beard. And what an experience it was for me and my staff, dealing with the Secret Service and snipers on the roof. One of our neighbors, we had houses really near our school, and they went to the houses and said, you know, during his visit, you can't be wandering around. And this neighbor, he decided he was just going to walk. He started walking around, and the Secret Service grabbed him. Not a good thing. You can't mess around with the Secret Service. So he came and he left unharmed. Nobody shot him, but right-wing protesters did bang on our school buses. What are you thinking? I don't know if they were right-wing local protesters or they just traveled around wherever Gore was going and disrupted as much as they could. That's probably what it was. But we had our share of crazy right-wingers, that's for sure. So it could have been locals. But why bother the kids? You don't bother the kids. Come on. Okay, that's my thing for today. You guys have a great day. Thank you.